We have a lot of news today, including some NHL trade talk around some teams like the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and others. We also have word on Nzaem Kadri suspension appeal, and could Ryan Reaves be suspended after what happened last night against the Avalanche? We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a lot to talk about here today. Before we jump into the trade talk, let's talk about the news of the day. That's Nzaem Kadri has been denied his appeal for his suspension to be lowered here by Commissioner Gary Bettman. Of course, he was suspended by NHL Players Safety and George Parros 8 games for the illegal check to the head on Blues defenseman Justin Falk. After conducting the hearing both sides and everything, Bettman has decided 8 games is the appropriate amount and has not made any decision to lower things. So, of course, Nzaem Kadri does have the right to send this to a third-party arbitrator, which he indeed has already started the process to do. So Kadri is taking this a step further. He will indeed be going to an arbitrator. At this point, he still has 5 of the 8 games remaining on the suspension, and obviously they have some time here to get another decision. I'm not sure how long this is going to take. I know the Avs don't play again until Wednesday. They have 2 days off between games, and even if he can shorten it even by 1 or 2 games, it makes a difference in getting him back in the lineup and helping his team out. So we will see. At this point, I would say it's probably unlikely anything happens, but we'll see if there's any chance. He might as well use the process to see in his case if anybody will make an exception for him here. Now, of course, Gary Bettman also cited a couple of reference points for not lowering things, looking back to 2013 with Patrick Kaleta and also the Tom Wilson suspension of the 20 games that was lowered to 14, using those guys as saying, like, you know what, this is another situation of repeat offenses in a similar type situation, players who have not learned their lesson, and he felt that the number of games was appropriate. It looks as though the Kadri side of things and their arguments were trying to get things lowered to about 4, which I don't think is going to happen. And at this point where we're in the playoffs and we're not talking so much about a financial penalty, given the fact that players are played based on regular season, I'm not really sure how things will go if the arbitrator feels that it should be less games and if that number of games has already gone by. So we'll see what happens and follow the situation a little further. We don't know exactly when we're going to know at this point. Now, the other situation that occurred also with the Avs last night against Vegas. The Avalanche took game 1 of the series in somewhat of a blowout fashion. The Avalanche were the much better, way stronger, much faster team, dominated the Avalanche on many aspects of the game. And of course, at one point though, Avs defenseman Ryan Graves laid a big hit on Vegas forward Mattias Janmark, who was left the game due to injury. In my opinion, the hit was clean. Some thought it was late. Some thought it was high. There is a size difference between Graves and Janmark. Obviously, Graves is much bigger, but still, to me, it looked like the shoulder from Graves got contact more in the sternum. Because of the height difference, though, they're bound to be a little bit of head contact. I don't think you can call it the focal point, and as of right now, there's been no word on any potential supplementary discipline for that. And if you look at the timing of it as well, to me, it's not late. It was just over a half a second after he dropped the puck. He was admiring his pass, which is a no-no, and the hit took place. Now, you could probably make the argument that in a game that you're up by a lot, maybe it was a mistake for Graves to even lower the boom and hit that player, because he kind of woke them up and had the team kind of coming after him the rest of the game. We saw a lot of rough stuff, which is fine. It's playoff hockey. It certainly created some animosity, but, it certainly helped things kind of get out of control at times. The Avalanche ended up with a major long, I can't remember the exact number of minutes, but the power play they had in the third period in the second half was crazy long. After the situation where Reaves is facing supplementary discipline for, he was given a match penalty, which is intent to injure. It looks as though he shoved Graves down. There's a lot that's hard to see, but it looks as though Reaves had his knee on the face and neck area of Graves, and Graves was bloodied up afterwards, and he was given an intent to injure match penalty, so he was kicked out, which automatically comes with a review by player safety. When you're given a match penalty, you're basically suspended until further review. So we'll see. Many feel that Ryan Reaves is likely going to get at least a few more games from this. He doesn't have the rap sheet as some other guys have, like Wilson and Kadri examples here, but still, it's a situation where I wouldn't be shocked if he's sat out a few extra games here, but we'll have to await word. That hearing is supposed to take place today. There could be additional videos coming to the channel here later on to update that situation situation. So stay tuned for the Ryan Reaves situation on that. Now we're going to pause for a quick second for a word from our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. Of course, with Manscaped, we have a special offer here for all Top Shelf Hockey viewers where you can get 20% off and free shipping on all orders at manscaped.com. Now, of course, Manscaped just launched a brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is a fantastic product. They've taken the level up here, even again with the skin-safe replaceable blades. It's waterproof, it's wireless charging, has a travel lock on it, as well as a nice light so you don't miss what you're doing. So certainly a terrific product. Now, many people associate Manscaped with their trimmers, which is certainly kind of their top product, but they do have a lot of other great options as well, including what they call the Weed Whacker, which is another trimmer for your ears and nose. And they have a variety of deodorants and sprays as well, which also keep you fresh and are terrific as well. So certainly Manscaped has a lot to offer, and we certainly highly recommend all of their products. So check out manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. So thanks very much for watching that promotional video for Manscaped. I greatly appreciate your support. Now let's get back into today's video. Then most of the rest of the info we're going to talk about here today comes from the latest 31 Thoughts blog and podcast that was both released earlier today. So, of course, we're blessed with a Game 7 here tonight between the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Habs have fought back from a 3-1 deficit to force Game 7. And one bit of good news as well is tonight the Maple Leafs are going to have a very limited number of fans in the building, somewhat like the Habs did, except it's going to be a smaller amount. After some pushback, the Ontario government has approved 550 healthcare and essential workers to be present at the game tonight. At least the Leafs will be able to have some people in the building. Now, of course, the Maple Leafs are comping all the tickets, so they will all be there free of charge, which is great on their part. And I believe in conjunction with Scotiabank, who is the team's main sponsor, that all people attending the game tonight will be given a Maple Leafs jersey. So that's also a very nice gesture. A lot of these people have worked really hard to keep their population safe and working in healthcare, and obviously having a big part in helping everybody come out of the pandemic. So certainly well appreciated on their side, I'm sure, and a great gesture by the Ontario government to allow some fans and between the Leafs and Scotiabank to look after them here as well. Now, jumping into today's Trade Talk, I want to touch a little bit further on what we talked about yesterday, and that's Seth Jones in Columbus. Elliot Friedman talked about this at great lengths in the podcast that came out earlier today, talking about the fact that he doesn't want to say never, that there's no chance of Jones going back here because, sometimes players have a change of heart, but it's believed in the past week that Jones and Columbus had a conversation, and it was revealed that he wants to test free agency and does not intend to re-sign at this time. Now, of course, it's believed now, based on what Friedman's saying, that they will indeed, as I talked a bit about yesterday, try to trade him by the NHL draft, and a lot of their other players could possibly be looking to get moved as well. It just kind of depends on what else happens here. I mean, you have to think they're going to have a long, hard conversation with Zach Werenski about this situation, as well as one of their goaltenders who's likely to get traded. He believes Patrick Laine is likely going to stay put. Obviously, Jarmo Kekalainen has to believe in him to sign him to a fairly expensive contract. I believe a short-term deal is likely what we're going to see in that regard. But it's just amazing how Columbus has had such a hard time to keep players there, and that was discussed at great length on the podcast. And what the reasons could be, it's believed a lot of it might have to do with the fact that how they negotiate in Columbus, how they really treat their RFAs especially. And he also went on to talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's one of the most recent high-level players who wanted out of Columbus, and he believes that he may have had an inkling that Jones was going to test free agency, and that a lot of the current top players on that team may not intend to stay long-term, so he kind of seen the writing on the wall and didn't want to necessarily be part of the team when they go through that he likely would have got it traded down the road anyway. So at least he tried to get something done ahead of time before he could end up in a different situation. So Dubois might have had more of an inside feel where things were going and decided it was his time to go now rather than later. At least that's what Friedman suspects could very well be the case here. But also on the head coaching front in Columbus, it's believed that they will indeed talk to David Quinn, of course, with the connection to John Davidson from New York. But it is believed they will take their time. They're not in a huge rush. They've already talked to 2 or 3 other coaches for interviews, including guys we discussed here before, like Rick Tocchet and Gerard Gallant, and I believe Todd Nelson's in the mix there too. And Quinn likely gets a look, and then some others as well. So I don't think there's a huge rush, but Columbus is certainly going to be a team to watch ahead of the NHL draft, where I think there could be a lot of high-level activity, especially where they had 3 first-round picks. They have Seth Jones. It's really hard to say what direction this team goes in, but we could see some pretty significant moves here over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Friedman also went on to talk about the fact in his blog here that he does believe there's been conversation between the Jackets and the Sabres, like we had previously discussed in a video last week, looking at a potential Sam Reinhart trade to address their center need and likely having a goaltender going the other way, whether it be Korpisalo or Elvis Merzlikins. So there very well could be something to that. Columbus and Buffalo are two teams in, similar predicaments with players that want to be on the move here, so it wouldn't be shocking to see those two teams hook up on a possible trade. Now, there's also some word out in Pittsburgh, wondering what kind of changes we're going to see there. Friedman addresses this in his blog here today. I know some are calling for Mike Sullivan to be gone, but he does have 3 years left on his contract, and personally, I know my first gut instinct was like, no, I don't think Sullivan is going to be going anywhere. I think he's a well-respected coach. They've had more success than failure under him. Yes, the last few years haven't gone well, but you could argue that that's more of a personnel issue than a coaching issue. And I knew that they'd given him a long-term extension a couple of years ago. And at this point, it looks as though he is likely going to be coming back. But it is possible we could see a significant trade or two within the Penguins organization to shake things up. I do think we're going to see Ron Hextall and Brian Burke address the goaltending first and foremost, which Friedman talks about the fact that Tristan Jarry likely isn't the starting goaltender next year. Now, we could either see one of two scenarios unfold. We could see a situation where maybe they trade Casey to Smith and they bring in another goaltender to be like a 1A, 1B situation with Jarry to take the pressure off. Or Jarry himself is the one who's traded and they find a whole new starting goaltender to come in and work with the Smith and not be the goaltending tandem moving forward. But there's certainly some moving parts there. But I wouldn't be shocked if Jarry gets moved after however they went in the playoffs. He had a really bad showing after a pretty decent regular season, but there were certainly its ups and downs during the regular season too. It wasn't, smooth sailing the whole way, that is for sure. And it just looks as though that when the pressure gets tough, he hasn't responded well. So I do think that the Penguins are still going to be attempting to go into win now mode, and they're likely going to try to do a quick retool to see if they can move forward. But they do believe that guys like Crosby, Letang, and Malkin are guys that the ownership especially wants to have retire as Penguins. But I know there's some talk about Malkin. I know his contract is the first one coming up between the two. Letang's not too far away either. And you know what? Obviously, those two guys, do they get extensions this year? It's hard to say how things go with Pittsburgh, but that's the belief from Friedman is that Mario wants them to retire Penguins, and they're likely going to look at getting them on an extension here for at least a little while longer, depending on how long they feel they can play. So that is all your news and rumors here for now. We'll likely be back with a potential update if we get more clarity on the Ryan Reaves situation or anything further on the Kadri suspension situation as well. Let me know your thoughts and your comments down below and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news and rumors on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.